What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Marriage and Medicine. So today we are starting on chapter 5, which is all about understanding and confronting your debt.
So in the book, they basically give you a few types of debt examples. So there's student debt, there is auto and consumer debt, and then there is mortgage, which is, I guess, essentially considered a debt as well. And so basically just going through all the different types, they explain what they are and the best way to tackle those things. So of course, student debt is usually student loans. People tend to take these out for college, or if you continue to further your education, you might take them out for medical school or whatever other types of schooling that are out there. So for physicians, there are technically two options or two ways that you can look at when it comes to trying to pay back your student loans. So you can either do the PSLF route, or you can not do that. So PSLF means public service loan forgiveness, and there are certain requirements you have to meet to be able to participate in that. You have to meet all of the requirements. So if you're one short, you can't apply. But the requirements are your employer has to be a 501c3. You have to have only direct loans, and you have to be on an income-driven repayment plan for 120 payments. So if you're missing any of those things, then you're not going to be able to participate in it.
So when you are thinking about whether or not PSLF is the route that you should go or not, the kind of rule that a lot of people use is if your debt is 2 times your income that you're going to be making as a physician, it's something that you should likely consider. And if you are also going to be working at one of those 501c corporations, then I mean it's an option for you, and you'll definitely benefit by being able to get a lot of those loans taken away and removed without having to pay taxes on it, which is why you should definitely consider it. On the other side, if you are going to go independent contractor or you're not going to work for one of those corporations, then I mean at that point it's brute force saving and paying off your loan ultimately. So if you are going to go the PSLF route, the most important thing is making sure that you get those payments counted. And the way that you do that is, first off, keep track of it yourself, whether it's on a spreadsheet, whether or not you're just printing out the stuff as you're making payments. And then at the end of the year, every year, make sure that you basically, there's a form that you fill out that your employer has to fill out, endorsing that you are still working for one of those corporations, and also showing that you are eligible for the program. So make sure that you do that every year as well. And especially during residency, even if you, in your mind, you know that you may not have that much debt and you're like, I'm not going to do PSLF, it's not for me. Even with that, make sure that you're still on an income-driven repayment plan. And I would still kind of keep that as an option. Because again, you don't know what the future's going to hold. You don't know what kind of changes are going to occur. And it may down the road be an option that's better for you. So always keep that as an option until you graduate and know where you're actually going to be working afterwards.
And once you make your 120 payments, like you're keeping track of those, once you've finished your last one, your loans are forgiven. So whatever is left, you don't have to pay for anymore. So that's why it's really important that you're keeping track of all of that, even while you're in residency. So initially when you start residency, you don't make payments on your loans. It usually kicks in around 6 months into residency. So even once you do start making payments, say your payments are super low, like $20, that still counts towards that 120 payments. Mm-hmm. Even if it was $0, it still technically counts. So don't feel like, oh, I'm only making this little payment, it's not gonna make any difference. Those do still count towards the 120, and your payments don't have to all be consecutive. So as long as you made 120 at some point, then your loans can be forgiven after that.
The next type of debt that we're going to talk about is basically auto and consumer loans. And so a lot of this is, credit card debt, car loans. So it is very common, especially in the medical field, to build up a lot of credit card debt, especially like 4th year medical school where you're out here traveling, trying to do all these interviews and all that kind of stuff. It happens. And so the most important thing once you get to that point is really trying to minimize it as much as possible. And also when it comes to dealing with car loans, if you have a car that's working, you don't need to take on a new car debt, then don't do it. That's kind of at the time until you can afford to do so by paying cash or something of that nature if possible.
And if you're someone who likes to use your credit card just for spending, like you like to eat out, you like to use it for trips, you like to use it for just whatever things that you like, you kind of need to get that under control while you're in residency, because once you're an attending and you're making way more money, that problem's just going to go with you, and it's going to be worse because you have a lot more money that you can just kind of blow through.
Right.
So you want to be better with your money while you don't have that much before you get a lot, and then it's just out of control.
And the last type of debt is, of course, mortgages. So in many situations, rule of thumb is likely to not buy a house in residency, mainly because it comes with a lot of extra things and your money does not stretch that far to cover some of these emergencies that may come up. But understandably, people are still going to buy houses. It is what it is.
And I was just gonna say, and you don't know like if you're gonna stay in that location long term. If you're only going for like 3 years, it might not be a good idea to buy a house just for 3 years.
Yeah, you might not make your money back on it. So that's kind of the reason why in that situation. But when it comes to mortgages, the most important thing is making sure that that mortgage is paid off before you retire. When you're in retirement, you want to really keep your funds to basically having to pay for your living expenses. You don't want to have to be paying for debt in any form, whether student loan, mortgages, whatever it is. You don't want any debt going into retirement because you have a fixed amount of money ultimately that you're going to be trying to live on at that point. And so you want to make sure that you are able to stretch that as much as possible.
So now when it comes to trying to pay back your debts that you might owe, there's 2 ways technically that you can go about doing it according to the book. So they have the Avalanche Method or the Snowball Method. So the Avalanche Method is essentially you're going to look at all of your debts and you're going to start with whichever one has the highest interest rate. So let's say that's your car. You're going to start with that one first, and you're going to try to put as much money towards that debt that you possibly can. And all of your other debts, you're just going to put minimum payments on those. So you're really just trying to focus on the one that has the highest interest rate. If you happen to have any extra money left over after you've paid the minimum on all the other ones, then put that extra money again towards the one that has that highest interest rate. That one is basically your main focus. You're just trying to get that one out of the way as soon as possible. Once that one is gone, then you're just going to shift to the next one that has the next highest interest rate. And you're basically just going to rinse and repeat, do the same process over and over until you've gotten all of your debts out of the way. For the Snowball Method, with that one, it's more focused on the actual dollar amount that your debts have, so not the interest rate. So you usually will start with the smallest amount and then work your way up to the biggest amount. So let's say if your smallest amount is credit cards, you're gonna pay as much money to that you can and only pay the minimums on all of your other debts. And then again, if you have any extra money left over after that, you're gonna just put that towards your small debt. Once you've knocked out that small debt, you basically will just repeat, do the same thing all over again. You'll go to the next smallest debt that you have and just keep going until you've knocked out all of your debts. So either way you go, you can't go wrong. Some people like to do the Avalanche Method just because they want to keep their interest rates as low as possible. Whereas some people like to do the Snowball Method because they feel like you can actually see your progress and like you're celebrating knocking off stuff as you go. It feels a little bit more attainable. So there's no right or wrong way to go about paying off your debt. Really, you just have to figure out which method you would rather do.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so that's kind of basically a summary of this entire chapter here. And so if you find anything that we're saying interesting, or if you want to get the book and read it for yourself, we will have a link below. You can click on that and you can go purchase it from Amazon. But yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video.